Chapter 1. I've decided to live 120 years. I'm 67 years old, and I've decided to live to be 120. Just a few years ago, I thought it would be enough to be active and in good health until I was about 80. My father passed away a few months ago at the age of 94. He was vigorously active through his early 80s. He knew a lot about Eastern thought and Feng Shui, and after retiring from teaching, he spent his later years counseling townspeople on the sites of their homes and graves, and on life in general. After the age of 85, though, he became much more frail physically and ended up almost never leaving the house. Witnessing my father's old age is probably what led me to think, without even realizing it, that healthy, independent living would be possible until about the age of 80, but that I should get ready for the end of my life after that. In 2008, I wrote a book, In Full Bloom, A Brain Education Guide for Successful Aging, with Dr. Jesse Jones, who is co-director of the Center of Successful Aging at California State University, Fullerton. In this book, we introduce the Zhang lifestyle, which means living long in health and happiness as you realize your dreams. This book was touted that year by Forward Reviews magazine as one of 7 remarkably well-written self-help books. Thankfully, it was loved by many readers as well. Lectures and conferences with Dr. Jones in the United States, South Korea, and Japan gave me an opportunity to meet thousands of seniors who wanted to age successfully. But even then, I had never thought I might be able to live beyond the age of 100. My reason for choosing a 120-year life. Several developments changed my thinking. For many years, I had come across various stories in the media about the increasing likelihood of reaching age 100, and many interviews with long-lived people around the world. Then, 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to play golf and talk with 102-year-old Ilchi Lee in South Korea. Not only was he so clear-minded and overflowing with vigor that he could play golf, but his optimism and wit made talking to him a joy. Lee's 66-year-old son, who sat down with us, said that although he sometimes used a golf cart because of his weak knees, his dad could easily walk a 4-mile golf course. Ilchi Lee had made up his mind to walk a lot to keep his heart and legs strong, and every morning at 6 o'clock, he set out on a trail near his home for an hour's walk. When it rained or snowed, he walked with an umbrella. The experience of meeting and talking directly with someone who was past the age of 100 was an incredible shock to my brain. It was amazing that such vitality and mental strength could pour from the body of a human over 100 years old. After that, I met many other impressive people who were living healthy and vigorous lives even when they were nearly 100. I started to sense that the era of the centenarian had come and that many people are already living it. I started to feel that the amazing increase in the human lifespan was my issue, not simply fascinating statistics or stories on the news. The first feeling I got from thinking that I might live to be 100 years old was definitely not joyful expectation. It was, oops! It was the feeling that I had been diligently running in a half marathon and was close to the finish line when I suddenly realized that the race wasn't a half marathon, but a full marathon. I was alarmed by the thought that my body and mind weren't ready to run a full marathon. I had an important awakening from this contemplation. I realized that I had been thinking passively about my lifespan, in other words, about my time. I had thought only that time had been given to me. I hadn't thought that I could extend my time by my will. I thought that long life was an external thing brought to me by the development of medicine or social and cultural changes. It hadn't really occurred to me that I could direct this process myself. As a result, I found that my life plan stopped at the age of 80. The time I might have after that was missing from my design for my life. But unless I had a design for life in old age, even if I ended up living to be 90 or 100, I wouldn't feel that I had played an active part. I wouldn't be able to say, I decided to be who I am and to live for this dream. And I lived to be 90, to be 100, according to the life plan I designed. After this series of reflections, I made a choice that would greatly change my thinking. I decided to live 120 years. This is the lifespan generally accepted as biologically possible for human beings. So I set as my expected lifespan the maximum number of years that current scientific understanding permits, and I then chose to redesign my life from that 120-year perspective. The fundamental reason I chose to live to be 120, as I revealed in the introduction, was not only a personal desire for a long life, nor was it a number I could expect based on my family history or my current state of health. My choice stemmed from my desire to be of service to the world and to take responsibility for the great dream that I have set for my life. For this dream, I want to complete the Earth Village project that I started in New Zealand. This choice brought a lot of changes to my personal life. First, my thinking about my current age changed significantly. At 67, I'm in the closing stages of an 80-year life, but I've just passed halfway through a 120-year life. I have more than 50 years left. How then should I live during that time? What do I want to live for? This shift in my thinking provided me with an opportunity to reflect seriously once again on who I am and what is important in my life. And it further clarified for me what I need to focus on to realize the dreams and values I consider important. Second, I began to manage my body and mind more actively. If I'm going to live to be 120 years old as a choice instead of relying on just being lucky enough to live a long time, then good health is fundamental. So I work to develop healthier eating and lifestyle habits, and I exercise at every opportunity. For example, thinking that I will need to maintain enough physical power to lift my body, I do 10 handstand push-ups against a wall every day. Third, my brain has been stimulated, so I work harder now than ever before. The information 120-year life was a new and powerful shock to my brain. Now, my brain is passionately searching my existing habits of thought and behavior for anything I should change, often demanding that I fix things so that I can live a good 120-year life. It has started pumping out new creative ideas, as if confirming for me that it can perform well for 120 years without a problem. My brain seems to be secreting hormones that increase positivity and vitality, and I feel as though I were 30 years younger. I feel that my body and mind are now in an optimal state, and that I'm living with hope and joy, and more passionately than ever before. I feel great gratitude that by choosing a 120-year life, I've had an opportunity to design my old age with a long-term perspective, and that I now have more time to do meaningful work for other people and the world. What do you think about living to 120? Since choosing to live to 120, I've actively spoken about that choice whenever I've had the opportunity, in private or in public. Most people have been fascinated. 60-somethings in particular sit back, relaxed, only to lean forward in their seats and listen carefully when I've talked about this. However, I soon learned that not everyone welcomes my idea. Some have even been antagonistic to my idea of choosing to live to 120. Such people have reacted in one of these three ways. Is that really possible? It's still nothing but a dream. Oh my God, for me that would be hell. Just because you made up your mind doesn't mean you're going to live that long, does it? We should just enjoy the years of life given to us before we die. What about you? What is the first thought or feeling that comes to mind when you hear talk of living to 120? Do you feel expectation or a sense of burden? The person with the longest documented lifespan was a 122-year-old French woman, Jeanne Calment, who lived from 1875 to 1997. Quite often we hear of people who claim to have lived even longer, although their births cannot be verified. It is said that most animals existing on Earth can live up to 6 times their growth period. Based on this theory, many scholars believe that the human lifespan, which includes a growth period of 20 years, can be increased to 120 years. Many Eastern traditions of mind-body training suggest that humans can live in good health up to the age of 120 if they take good care of themselves in accordance with natural principles. A research team at Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York City recently announced that the limit to the human lifespan is 115 years, although many scientists objected to this announcement, arguing that humans can actually live longer than that. According to 2015 United Nations data, the global population of people over the age of 100 is about 500,000. That's a 4-fold increase from 20 years ago, and it is predicted that the number will increase even more rapidly in the future. According to one survey, 72,000 Americans were over the age of 100 in 2014. Not long ago, the global technology company Google started investing massively in a life extension project. I read one article that said the project's goal is to extend the human lifespan to 500 years. I'm not sure we can live as long as the goal set up by Google, but I think the time of a 120-year life, as the norm, could come much faster than we think. The average human life expectancy was no more than 47 in 1900. But it has continued to increase as nutrition and hygiene have improved and medical technology has developed, and it is now 79 years. How rapidly is technology developing? Think about our lives 40 years ago. It was unusual then for an individual to own a computer, and we couldn't have imagined the world of today in which everyone carries a smartphone. The development of science and technology, popular awareness of the importance of self-care, and the wider adoption of healthy lifestyles could quickly bring to humanity lives longer than we now imagine. Most South Koreans in their 40s and 50s take it as a given that they should be able to live to the age of 100 if they manage their health well. Insurance products offering coverage up to the age of 110 are now being proactively marketed. Even if you're not that optimistic about human life extension, it's clear that we will live much longer than our parents' generation. If you're now in your 60s or thereabouts, you could have as few as 20 or as many as 60 years left to live. Try multiplying your age by 0.7. Living to be 120, for me, that would be hell. Some who shake their heads at the idea of a 120-year life think, old age equals a difficult time of loneliness. Long life brings to mind a picture of sickness, fragility, dependence, and concerns about becoming a burden to someone. Such people may have had a family member or acquaintance who passed away after a bedridden, difficult, painful old age. The old age we encounter through the media is also full of serious problems, further encouraging negative thinking about our later years. Of course, as we grow older, we cannot avoid the physical and mental changes that accompany the phenomenon of aging. There may be times when things we could once do without difficulty, like lifting heavy objects, leaping upstairs, or quickly learning a new name, no longer feel easy. However, bodies and minds in their 50s and 60s are incomparably more youthful and stronger now than when our parents passed through those ages. Additionally, most of us retire in a much better state of health and finances than previous generations did. Choosing to live to 120 doesn't mean merely extending our lives for several decades until immediately before death we have frail bodies and cloudy minds. It means that we pursue something in our old age, actively choosing how we will live, and we make it a time when we can live in health and happiness, feeling that life is fun and rewarding. A new method of calculating age was fashionable for a time in Japan, whose people are among the longest lived in the world. According to this method, you multiply your current age by 0.7. Only then, it's claimed, do you get the age you actually feel, physically and mentally, because these days we live much more youthfully than previous generations did. Calculating age this way, a 50-year-old is 35, a 60-year-old is 42, and a 70-year-old is 49. What about a 120-year-old? 84. Our heads are still influenced by ideas from the time when the average lifespan was 60. Without realizing it, we are programmed to think that our 20s and 30s are the time of our youth, and our 40s and 50s are our middle age. Thinking of our 60s and above brings to mind infirm bodies, loss, pain, and dependence. In many countries, 65 is generally the age of retirement, and from then on a person is commonly classified as a senior. The practice of defining 65 as the beginning of old age is said to have originated in Germany in 1889, when the government paid retirement pensions beginning at the age of 65. We need to remember that the average lifespan at that time wasn't even 50 years. Many gerontologists say that people in their 70s now live similarly to people in their 50s in the 1960s. Rethinking the 120-year life from this perspective will definitely change our preconception that a long old age is a burden. Life habits determine longevity. As a Tao master, one of the most important things I teach people is that our lives are fundamentally not our own. We have received life from nature, and no one knows when that life will leave us. What I choose, living to be 120, is impossible without the blessings of nature. A year from now, even tomorrow, could be my last day on earth. There is a Korean saying, "Do your best and then await the will of heaven." It means that in everything, do your best first and then humbly accept the will of nature as to whether you are successful. The power to end life belongs to nature, but we can extend the time we have through management of our bodies and minds. Many studies have demonstrated the association between life extension and lifestyle, so those who have chosen unhealthy lives, drinking, smoking, being under too much stress, will have their life expectancies reduced by their choices. Those who have chosen healthy lives, developing good habits, exercising, and thinking positively, will have their life expectancies extended by their choices. Of the major factors determining longevity, food is definitely important. The food you consume becomes your body. The results of a University of London study of 65,000 people indicated that people who ate 7 portions of fruits and vegetables a day had a premature death rate that was 42% lower than those who ate less than 1 portion a day. Those who ate 5 to 6 portions a day had a premature death rate that was 36% lower. It is widely known that eating less is one secret to long life. According to one study, people who eat moderately can expect 5 more years of life. In Japan, many long-lived elderly people stop eating when they feel about 80% full. In addition to eating less, another habit seems to be closely associated with long life. Dan Buettner, the author of The Blue Zones, 9 Lessons for Living Longer from the People Who've Lived the Longest, interviewed hundreds of people over the age of 100 around the world. He found that most eat their smallest meal in the late afternoon or evening. The fact that exercise is effective for life extension is universally recognized. According to a study conducted by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on subjects age 40 and above, doing 150 minutes of moderate exercise or 75 minutes of high-intensity exercise every week had a life extension effect of 3.4 years. Doing twice that amount had an extension effect of 4.2 years, and even those who exercised only half the recommended amount lengthened their lives by 1.8 years. Basic mindset, Attitude toward life and personal relationships are also important for life extension. According to Dr. Becca Levy of the Yale School of Public Health, those who have a positive perspective on aging tend to live about 7.5 years longer than those who have a negative perspective. We usually think that just living carefree and easygoing is effective for longevity, but one study overturned this idea, showing that having a diligent, conscientious, prudent personality extends life 2 to 3 years, equivalent to a 20 to 30% reduction in premature mortality. According to data from 143 studies in which 300,000 people participated, people who have strong social connections live an average of 7.5 years longer than those who are isolated. Breaking habits that are bad for the body is essential for life extension. Life is extended 6 to 8 years for a woman who quits smoking at the age of 35. And if she quits at the age of 50, the likelihood that she will die over the next 15 years is cut in half compared to someone who continues smoking. Reducing the time you spend sitting each day to less than 3 hours has the effect of extending your life expectancy by 2 years. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle is directly connected with life extension in so many respects. We can infer that changing major life habits in a healthy direction could extend life by as little as 10 years or as much as several decades. No one can confidently answer, of course, to someone who asks whether living to 120 is possible just because you've made up your mind to do so. However, if our assumptions are based on the brilliant development of medical technology and the results of studies like those I've mentioned, we can say that we are gradually approaching this as a real possibility. How long will you choose to live? To more actively design your old age, I suggest that you choose the age you wish to reach. If you could decide this for yourself, how long would you want to live? Is there some particular age that comes to mind? If so, why that age? Make up your mind to live to a certain age instead of simply wishing to live that long. Express your intention clearly to yourself, not to someone else. Have you chosen your lifespan? Next, based on the age you have chosen, calculate how much time you have left between now and when you die. 30 years? 40 years? 50? Most people will have quite a long time left. Think seriously about that time. Isn't it at least a third of your whole life? Or even nearly half of it? Now ask yourself these questions. Do I have a goal and a design for the time I have left? What will living to the age I've chosen look like? What do I want to achieve and who will I become during that time? Listen carefully for a voice inside you responding to these questions. Each and every one of us can choose how we will use the time and the life that have been given to us. This is the greatest power and right that we have. Unfortunately, though, only a tiny fraction of people make good use of this power. Most people have small plans for what they will do tomorrow, what they will do next week, where they will travel during their next vacation, what they will do this holiday season, and so on. Few have plans for 5 years or 10 years from now, much less an overall life plan for where the current of their lives will flow and what goals they will achieve in each stage of their lives: youth, adulthood, middle age, and old age. Without a big picture for how we will live our lives and for what, we end up just going with the flow, allowing our circumstances to determine how things work out. French novelist Paul Bourget said this: "We must live as we think, or we shall end up by thinking as we have lived." After attentively observing and talking with people who, like me, have entered the second half of their lives, I have reached this conclusion. Most people lack a concrete picture of their lives in their 70s, 80s, and beyond. This is true for people who are physically, mentally, and socially active, as well as for those who live passive, isolated lives following retirement. Even people who spend their old age in busy activities, traveling, engaging in hobbies, or volunteering, have to-do lists that fill their schedules but rarely have a big picture for what they want to achieve. To design the second half of your life so it is healthy, happy, and overflowing with joy and a sense of fulfillment, you must have a purpose or goal that gives that time meaning. In fact, for choosing how long you will live, what should come first is finding a purpose or goal you want to achieve during the rest of your life. Picking a random number that just pops into your head has little meaning. Such a number itself won't motivate you to live to that age. When we have goals that give us meaning, we do our best to achieve those goals, using all the resources we have. When we have a reason for living to a specific age, we work even harder to manage our bodies and minds and to maintain healthy life habits. At age 73, Susan Gerace of Tempe, Arizona, has a goal of living in good health until the age of 93. She retired after living her whole life as a nurse and nurse practitioner, helping mothers give birth and writing prescriptions for patients. A single mom, she feels great pride and gratitude for the fact that she provided a good education to 5 children who are living their lives well as mature individuals and good citizens. She said the following about her reason for choosing to live to be 93. "It was one day last year. I was sitting with my arms around the shoulders of my 7-year-old grandson. He said to me, 'Grandma, later when I grow up and have kids, will you be alive? So you can hug them the way you're hugging me now?' 'Sure,' I answered. I did a calculation and chose that age. The thought that Susan wanted to leave behind good memories and life experiences for her children and grandchildren gave her the goal of living in good health at least until the age of 93. My 120 years and Susan's 93 have significance because there are clear reasons and purposes for our choices. How long will I choose to live? Ask yourself this question seriously and listen to your inner voice. You'll find that it is a very powerful question, for it will enable you to realize what you think is important in life. The journey for making the second half the prime of your life begins with this realization. Today is unlikely to be your last day, but the probability that today will be the first day of the rest of your life is 100%. If you reflect on your life so far and plan your future from a long-term perspective, regardless of how long you choose to live, you will clearly be able to have a healthier, more meaningful, more fulfilling life.